Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about something that can really make the difference in an interview. I'm talking about interviewing the employer. We're going to talk about why is interviewing the employer so important. We're going to talk about interviewing recruiters, and we're going to talk about interviewing hiring managers, and then we're going to go over some general tips. The main reason you want to ask questions during an interview process is it gives you an idea of what hidden needs that an employer may have. You can also tailor more of your responses around it. So say you're asking some questions and you find something that an employer has a need for, you can actually now tailor your questions to that. It gives you an opportunity to turn around a bad interview if you ask some really good questions and clarify some stuff. It also helps you understand the role, the current situation. So think about hitting the ground running. Also, there may be situations where the employer is not very well known, and you want to get an understanding of who the employer is. It also helps you rule out things like scams. You can check out my scam video about how to assess a company and offer in order to determine if it's a job scam. The link is in the description. All right, let's talk recruiters. So with recruiters, you want to use this time to get information on the employer, about the process, and about the opportunity in general. And the questions that you ask may depend on who you're talking to. So are you talking to a corporate recruiter or a staffing recruiter? Corporate recruiters work for the employer and have a sense of company culture. They're also a lot more strategic in their hiring. Staffing recruiters work for temp agencies or staffing companies outside of the employer and use their networks to find candidates for multiple employers. Let's talk about some question ideas. So some good questions to ask any recruiter can include, what is the one thing as a candidate you wish that I had? This is a great question because it gives you an idea later on in the process when you're being asked, what is your greatest weakness by a hiring manager? This also gives you an idea of things that you can go for in terms of professional development to make your application stronger. If this is in fact the job that you're looking for, if it's your dream job. What does the recruitment process look like? So at the end of the day, every recruitment process is different, and you want to get a sense of what this employer does when they're hiring people. Is it just a straight up interview process, or do they have presentations that you may have to do? Do they have a technology test? Do they have an online quiz? Is there a survey? And this gives you an idea of things that you can do to prepare for later on down the line, such as maybe studying for a technology test. All right, let's talk about staffing recruiters. So because staffing recruiters often work outside of the employer, you want to get a sense of their relationship with the employer. So how long have they been doing business with this company? Is it a brand new employer, or is this an organization they've been doing business with for years? Again, this is a great way how to flush out issues that have to do with scams, because they do exist, and occasionally, not often, but sometimes they can dupe a staffing company as well. But you want to get a sense for how long this company has been around, and is it a trustworthy source? Is there anything else you can tell me about the particulars of this role? What I really like about this question is that when you're talking to a staffing recruiter, they often know a lot more about the details and are willing to share those details much more readily than, say, a hiring manager or a corporate recruiter. If you ask the question, how much is the salary, right? You don't ask that to a corporate recruiter because they'd be like, is this all about the money? But a staffing recruiter doesn't necessarily care so much about that. So by asking this question, you can flesh out extra particulars in the job, such as the salary range. And this is a great place to get more intel for answering some of those questions later down the line, such as salary. Let's talk about corporate recruiters. What do you love about working here? The advantage with interviewing a corporate recruiter is that they already have a sense of the corporate culture because they work at the place. So you want to get a sense of what do people take pride in, what the company may value, what's really good that's going on within the company, what's cool about this employer. These are things that you can get by asking this question. So later on, if the hiring manager asks, why do you want to work here? You get a sense of some things that other people value about this employer. What is the general career progression for this role? Now, what's really interesting about this question is that sometimes employers have an idea of how they're going to move people through their company, and is there areas that people can progress. So you want to have a sense of, is this a place where they invest in their people and they have an intentionality behind moving people up and providing promotions? All right, with that, we're going to move on to the hiring manager. So you want to be careful about your hiring managers because they are the decision maker. This is the person who's likely to be your boss, or maybe it's someone your boss reports to. So you want to be very careful around some of the questions that you ask this particular person. I have a formula for it. It's the 3 R's of interviewing an employer, and they are relate, reveal, and review. So the first type of question that you want to ask is relate. And this is something important because if this person is someone you're going to be reporting to on an ongoing basis, you want to have a connection. Business is all about relationships, and you want to have a good relationship with this person for the long term. So here's some questions that you can ask that can help you relate. What drew you to this company? Again, this is asking about the corporate culture. It's getting a sense of what's important to this individual. Another great question to ask is, what would you say the company's greatest achievement is? Gives you a sense of what the company cares about. So the next section is reveal. And this is a very important section. It's actually the biggest. And the reason that it's so important is that it gives you a sense of what are you walking into. It's a lot of situational based questions. You know, what exactly is the status of things? And where do you want me working? It gives you a sense of what's going on and gives you the ability to hit the ground running. So a great question to ask is, what is the department's greatest challenge and how does my role help to overcome it? This is a great question because it gives you an idea of what issues they've experienced, what are some of their pain points, and this can really flush out some things that maybe you've had experience with, and you can actually follow up with additional selling after they answer this question. So say, for example, they've had issues with administration, and administration is a strength of yours. It might not be the primary role, but it might be something where you can add some additional value. Who is your top performer and what factors contribute to their success? This is a great question for internships because when a company is looking to bring on an intern, especially if they're taking internships seriously and wanting to keep people for the longer term, they want to bring people in who are going to grow into the role. And by asking this question, you're saying, what do I need to pay attention to coming in so that I grow into this role? This is not a great question, though, for people who are seasoned in the role, people who are seasoned veterans, because you should already have a sense of what contributes to success. But for internships, this is a great question. How did this position become available? It tells you, is this company growing? Is it shrinking? Is it expanding? How will my performance be measured so we can know our impact? Employers, at the end of the day, they want to hire people who can move the needle, people who will bring value to the company. So asking the question, how performance will be measured so that we can know that we're making an impact, says you care very much about performance, you care very much about measurement, and you're in this job to make an impact. You actually value the work that you do. And that's what this question ultimately tells the employer, in addition to them thinking, this person is coming in and they want to know how they're going to start working. What would you like to see accomplished within the first 30, 60, and 90 days? 30, 60, 90 days is generally a probationary period. What you're actually asking behind this question is, what do you need done for me to pass probation? That's what this question is essentially asking. You're also saying, I'm going to come in, I'm going to hit the ground running. I'm going to get things done in the first 30 days. That's how long it's going to take you to see results. From what they say, you can actually develop a 30, 60, 90-day plan. And say you have a second interview. You can actually then say, here's my 30, 60, 90-day plan based on what we said in the interview last. This really gives a great impression because you're already hitting the ground running before you're even offered the role. Now, the other thing you can do is ask situational-based questions. So say you've done your research and you've noticed a few things, you can ask questions such as, in my research, I came across a press release about a new inventory transformation project. How will this be impacting the department? This already gives the employer a sense that you're up to date with current events, you're eager to jump in head first, and instead of talking about things like, do you know inventory, you can actually start talking about the implementation of, say, a transformation project, or what are the next steps. So you actually have a much more thorough understanding of what's happening. You want to end off the interview by doing a review. Is there anything that you feel I failed to address? This is a great question because it can actually save or turn around an interview. So when you're saying, is there anything I failed to address? They may actually say, you know, I would feel much more comfortable if you'd answered this question a little bit more fully. And that means you can add additional things at the end and potentially improve your chances of getting into the position. All right, with that, we'll move on to tips. So tip number one, never ask a why question. You may have noticed all the questions that I've asked are what or how questions. I'm actually taking a page from Simon Sinek's book on Start With Why. You don't ask why questions because it speaks to a part of the brain that controls decision-making, but not language. Tip number two, Google the company and the industry. You want to get a sense of what's going on. Is there a number of press releases of things that you can bring up in your interview? Also, you can set up Google alerts and get these things automatically for companies that you really want to work with. So by looking up people on LinkedIn, you get a sense of how you might be able to tailor your conversation a little bit more. Tip number four, review the job posting. The job posting tells you a lot about what the position is going to be about, and it gives you an idea of what's really important to both the recruiter and the hiring manager. If you want to know more about how to read job descriptions, you can see my T-bar video, link is in the description. Number five, have a purpose to every question you ask. And the reason that this is important is you want to be intentional. You want to use the information that you get to move you along in the process. Consider taking some time to think about what questions should you be asking, what's important about this employer, what do you need to know to really start to work at this company. To that, I'm going to come to tip number 6, write out your questions in advance. You don't want to show up for the interview and then can't remember what you were going to ask, even if it's just bullet points on a paper that's printed, or say it's in a Zoom interview and you just have it on a Word doc on your computer. You want to have something that you can actually refer back to. All right, well, thank you for watching this video on interviewing the employer. Once again, my name is Jesse. I am an employment specialist. Feel free to subscribe, and we'll see you next time to talk more about strategy and innovation and tools for job search. See you then.